Hey, what's happening, guys? What's going on YouTube? You've tuned into Rules for Rebels. Got an interesting story I wanted to share with you guys today. This one's, I would call it somewhat business related. New York City bans pre-employment drug testing for marijuana. This article comes to us from the BK Reader, which is local news for Brooklyn by Brooklyn. And this is one of two pieces of New York news today. I actually saw a video on my way into a meeting this morning from BTC Kyle about how he was forced to liquidate his Bittrex account because New York, and this is actually New York State, not New York City, but still a New York story. New York rejected Bittrex's cryptocurrency exchange license, their money transmitter license, and even New York's been a kind of a stickler for cryptocurrency. New York, it's a little bit of a nanny state. They're kind of a pain in the ass, especially for cryptocurrency. And even Coinbase. We're looking right here at Coinbase's. I forget if this is their money transmitter license. Coinbase, who had been around since 2012 and is kind of the leader in cryptocurrency, especially kind of like legitimate cryptocurrency, actually trying to go about following the laws. New York or Coinbase, who'd actually been around since 2012, wasn't actually able to even get a Bitcoin license, or I should say a money transmitter license, as well as New York actually, I believe, also has their own cryptocurrency or digital currency license in addition to a money transmitter license. It wasn't until 2017 that Coinbase actually got their license. Hawaii is another state that's kind of a pain in the butt when it comes to that stuff, and we're going to be getting into the weed story for you weed heads in just a minute here. But I just wanted to touch on this one. The reason they rejected their application was they said they had some insufficiencies in their compliance program, and even went as far as to say their compliance officer might be incompetent. And their compliance officer is a guy by the name of John Roth, who was a former Department of Homeland Security Inspector General, as well as someone who spent time working for the Department of Justice as a special counsel for international money laundering. So, what does that say about if this guy is incompetent to be a compliance officer for Bittrex, what does that say that he was in charge of enforcing money laundering for the Department of Justice? Doesn't really seem to jive. Either the U.S. government is hiring incompetent people to run their money laundering programs, or New York State is being a little bit overly critical of Bittrex. Another thing I kind of found interesting about this story, governments, oftentimes do these things to quote-unquote protect the public. But as normally happens with government actions, there are more unintended consequences, and typically worse unintended consequences, than actually what they're trying to protect. So in this instance, BTC Kyle talked about he's being forced to liquidate his account, which he was saying that's going to be a taxable event. Moving money off an exchange is not a taxable event, at least as far as I know. Coinbase reports are kind of goofed up. If you move money back and forth between Coinbase.com and Coinbase Pro, formerly GDAX, the Coinbase reports are actually going to show that as a sell. They're actually going to show it as a taxable event. But if you use something like Bitcoin Tax or some better tax software to figure out your Bitcoin taxes, that should not be a taxable event. But nonetheless, when BTC Kyle went to try to liquidate his account, he started getting all these messages about, you're in an area that's not covered by our service. You can't do anything. So now he's kind of like sitting in this limbo where he needs to get his money off the account, but he can't get his money off of the account. So it seems like New York State has kind of caused more headaches than they've actually protected anybody. But getting into this article, I think this is kind of a long time coming, and I hope we see more cities and states enact laws like this. It's kind of funny. There's a number of different states who've actually gone as far as to make it a felony to cheat on drug tests. So, God forbid you don't want your privacy violated. But yeah, New York City has banned pre-employment testing for marijuana. They say testing is an impediment to opportunity that dates back to the Reagan-era war on drugs, said public advocate Jumaine Williams. So, it really is kind of stupid. We should be trying to make more job opportunities and trying to help people get ahead. And drug testing for marijuana doesn't really seem to do anything. People are allowed to drink alcohol, which, I as well as many others would probably argue is more harmful than marijuana. There's a lot of people who don't go out for certain jobs because of marijuana. I know the government has a hard time hiring technical computer people and programmers and stuff like that, because the federal government drug tests for everything, and anyone who contracts with the federal government is also required to drug test, and they're having a hard time. I was just talking to somebody who was at some type of hackathon or programmers conference, and I think the NSA or the CIA was there trying to recruit, and nobody wants to work for them, and that's a large part of the reason for a lot of them. But the article goes on to say, the New York City Council passed on Tuesday a ban on pre-employment drug testing for marijuana usage. The bill, sponsored by public advocate Jumaine Williams, Majority Leader Lori A. Cumbo, and Council Member Carlina Rivera, prohibits employers from requiring a prospective employee to submit to testing for tetrahydrocannabinols, or THC, the active ingredient in marijuana, as a condition of pre-employment. Exceptions are provided for security-sensitive jobs and those tied to a federal or state contractor grant, and that's because the federal government requires anybody getting money from them, any company getting money from them, anybody contracting with them, they require them to drug test. Here's, I just, before we kind of carry on with the article, I had kind of a funny thought the other day. I was talking with somebody about drug testing, and we were kind of talking about the analogy, and a lot of companies are wanting to start getting access to your Facebook or your email login or whatever else, but it's almost like, what if you went in for a job interview and the company was like, hey, give us your phone. We need to look through your phone. You're like, hey, why the fuck do you want to look through my phone? And they're like, oh, well, we want to make sure, in the age of this Me Too movement, we want to make sure that you're not sexually harassing women or sending dick pics around. So, we're going to have to look in your phone to make sure that you're not doing that. And you're like, well, fuck. What makes you think that I am a sexual harasser or sending unwanted dick pics to people in the first place? Well, we don't know that. We just want to check to make sure you aren't. And that's essentially what drug testing is. We have no reason to believe you use drugs. If you do use drugs, we have no reason to believe that you'll allow it to interfere with your work, but you're going to need to pee in this cup so we can check you. So if you're not cool with your employer asking for your phone to check for dick pics, you should. I'm probably doing a terrible job of throwing this analogy out there. My girlfriend says I'm horrible with analogies, but you get the point. Companies wanting to intrude into your life. Like, why is it okay for marijuana use, but not other areas? And it's a slippery slope when you let the government, with the government as well. When you let the government, or when you let private corporations start intruding into what people do in their lives. It really, really shouldn't be happening. If it doesn't affect your work, if you don't bring it into the workplace, what you do on your own time is your own business, as far as I'm concerned. Opponents of pre-employment testing, like Williams, argue that in many cases, screening for THC does more harm than marijuana itself, with applicants being rejected for a positive test or declining to apply to jobs that require it. Testing isn't a deterrent to marijuana, it's an impediment to opportunity that dates back to the Reagan-era war on drug measures that's now a war on workers, said Williams. Cannabis accounts for about half of all positive drug tests, and failed tests lead to an inability for many to advance in their careers. As many as 70% of large employers utilize pre-employment drug screenings, encompassing as many as 40% of jobs, according to a 2018 Vox report. Prospective employers don't test for alcohol, so marijuana should be no different, said Williams. We need to be creating more access points for employment, not less. And as we push for legalization on a state level, it makes absolutely no sense that we're keeping people from finding jobs or advancing their careers because of marijuana use. It's kind of funny. I actually used to I always thought it'd be kind of a fun or an exciting job to be either a cop or a fireman, but you can't smoke weed as a cop or a fireman. And, not that I would pass up a career just because I want to smoke some weed, but, it is kind of an impediment. I heard, I think within the past year, Vancouver actually now allows police officers to smoke weed off duty. So as long as they're not on duty, they're allowed to use marijuana, and I think that's kind of the direction things should be coming. Pretty much all my uncles and cousins are all either Chicago cops or Chicago firemen, and they're all heavy drinkers, if not alcoholics, and that's perfectly fine. But you can't smoke a joint on Friday night and go in and be a cop or a fireman on Monday morning. So I think that's kind of stupid. The City Council also passed a second bill on Tuesday, sponsored by Council member Donovan Richards of Queens. His bill prohibits the Department of Probation from conducting drug tests for marijuana, preventing hundreds of people from being rearrested for low-level marijuana charges, which often are unrelated to their original offenses. The passage of these bills is an important step in the decriminalization of marijuana and the reduction of collateral consequences such as job loss and loss of access to subsidized housing and other benefits, the City Council's Progressive Caucus said in a statement. Progressive Caucus introduced marijuana justice package last month that includes 4 pieces of legislation and 13 resolutions in support of ethical legalization of marijuana that prioritizes equity and restitution, reduces the collateral consequences from marijuana criminalization, and promotes policies that prioritize the inclusion of communities most harmed by marijuana criminalization. We will push the remaining bills and resolutions dealing with the collateral consequences of marijuana usage and possession on radicalized child welfare proceedings to hearings and passages in the coming week, the caucus said in the statement. So I'll link to this article as well as the New York cryptocurrency article, just since we mentioned that one as well, down in the description box below. Curious to hear your guys' thoughts on these issues, or if you got any funny drug testing stories you want to tell, drop those as well. And that's all I really got for you guys today. Drop a comment. Let me know what you guys think of this story. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, smash that subscribe button down below. Slowly making my march to 100,000. Help me get there. Hit that subscribe button. Until next time, guys, Rules for Rebels, signing out.